in Austin where they're having Occupy Wall Street events. I have reporters in San Antonio, and they report that it's actually anti-globalist, anti-New World Order, anti-central bank people who understand the finance oligarch movement. But when they're there, what you just said, the corporate dinosaur media is only giving voice to the Sorosian Obama people whose answer is austerity, calling that get the rich to pay that offshore. So how do we reach out to these not so useful idiots? They're putting useful idiots on the news, but really what you just said, the media is billing this as a new revolution and saying George Soros will save us basically through his fronts. But what you just said is what we've now found. The grassroots isn't actually buying it, but it doesn't matter. Perception's reality. The dinosaur media is saying that Soros is our leader.
There are a couple of problems with these groups now. It's good that they're anti-Wall Street, good that they're anti-Obama, good that they don't like Michael Moore and certain other of these fakers. Now, at the same time, I have to say my information is they're not interested in Ron Paul. They're not interested in the Austrian School of Economics. So there's sort of a void. And one of the problems they have is they're into this General Assembly mentality. It's a kind of groupthink. It's a very strange thing. They say we got to do everything by consensus of the group, by the group, and for the group. What it means then is that they spend hours deciding what to order for lunch, and so far they have not been able to articulate any concrete program of their own, not even a single demand.
No, I've seen it. They'll put out 200 lines of general fluffiness, but never protest the Fed, as I've announced.
Right. In other words, what you need is a program of demands that will set them apart from the Democratic Party, a series of things where the Democratic Party can't follow, because otherwise these people are destined to become the dupes for the re-elect Obama campaign.
Okay, now let's stop there. The reason I had you on today, and I want you to go into demands and your idea for the solutions to give that your perspective, what you'd call a classical American system perspective, outside the box of liberal, conservative, socialist, fascist, all these terms. But briefly, you have done the research. Get into the constellation of Obama, Ford Foundation, Soros foundations that are attempting to lead opposition to them.
A friend of mine was at this demonstration in Wall Street the other day, and he asked one of the honchos, because they claim they have no leaders, but they do have leaders, right? And the media knows who to call. When Olbermann on the Al Gore network there wants to talk to a leader, he gets a honcho by the name of Kelly Heresy. So he knows who to call. They know who the people are that dominate this. They've just said, let's go march across the Brooklyn Bridge. Why march across the Brooklyn Bridge? What the hell does that have to do with anything? So they're being manipulated. Now, one of the top people in the program drafting committee told a friend of mine their demands are going to be more money for the Securities and Exchange Commission and stop the revolving door between Wall Street and Washington. And these are very timid reformist demands. These are demands coming really from congressional staff of the Democratic Party, say on the Senate Finance Committee.
Yeah, those are things that can be obfuscated. They're also calling basically for the re-election of Obama. We've confirmed that. They're also...
Wait a minute. At what level? Because, again, the information I have is that the average person there is not in love with Obama. That's one of the...
No. I'm telling you what the mainstream media chooses to amplify. So that's the reality out there with people of what this movement is. And I've seen the different interviews with the people. I've just read, as you said, these meetings where literally hundreds of points come out. Now, there are some groups separately that are organically under this banner going out and protesting Bank of America, robo-signing. I think that's a great thing.
That's better.
But mainly, the main drive is raise taxes on the rich, and they've got Warren Buffett in this film, The 1%, with Bill Gates' dad out promoting taxing the rich. But we all know that's just a cover for austerity.
Yeah, the problem with that is taxing the rich it's fine in theory, but the number of rich that you have there is relatively small. The money you're actually going to get from that, I think, is not going to be the solution.
It's $2 trillion if you took all domestic money, which wouldn't run the country for a year or pay off the $14 trillion. The real ultra elites pushing these movements and promoting domestic takeovers and higher taxes are all tax exempt offshore.
The thing that you want to do is to tax Wall Street turnover, not individuals, but sales, a sales tax for Wall Street, a 1% Wall Street sales tax. Their turnover is three
right.
3 quadrillion plus. You take 1% of that, although it'll go down, obviously, you get some real money for the federal treasury and also for the state treasury. Now, given the starting point for these young people, the most obvious thing for them is the question of the depression. We have a world economic depression. The only question is, who's going to pay for it? Should Wall Street pay for it because they created it? Or should the average working family, young kids, other people, old people, sick people, should they pay? Obviously, the answer is Wall Street should pay. If you're against Wall Street, it means you want to break the political and economic power of Wall Street. So leading edge is the student loan question. Because all of these kids, they all share one horrendous fact in their lives, that they're crushed under a burden of high-interest student loans. And this is something new, right? It used to be in the late New Deal, you had the National Defense Education Act.
No, it's another bubble. I mean, even state-funded schools that I pay for with my tax money, like UT, have got close to $100 billion in their fund, and they're always raising the prices. And I want to get to a list of demands and real things. But Webster, I've got you here tonight to go over the people trying to co-opt to control this, because you did some amazing research on it.
Okay, the obvious people are, on terms of the New York one, Occupy Wall Street, I mentioned them. SEIU Trade Union, Acorn, those honchos, plus adventurers, people that we don't know yet. I mean, look at this Kelly heresy. And
well, we got Van Jones.
Yeah, now, that's a little bit different. Now, the one here in Washington is starting on Thursday.
And you got Al Gore's network putting them on.
All right, but listen, the one in Washington now, this is now going to be Rebuild the Dream, or Rebuild the American Dream, and all dreams. This is Van Jones, a former czar from the Obama White House. He's the guy who was kicked out. He was Watergated out because he had signed some 9/11 thing. He's not interested in 9/11. And indeed, the top honchos of the one in Washington coming up later this week are David Swanson and Kevin Zeese. These are both sworn enemies of 9/11 Truth. And I mention this because it shows you what these people were doing during the course of the last decade. They were mainly fighting to keep 9/11 Truth separate from the peace movement, because that's when it could have reached critical mass.
Yeah, they were sabotaging key true grassroots movements that could defeat this Wall Street agenda.
Exactly. So now they're doing this in a different form. Now, this one, the Washington one, is more sophisticated because they do have some demands. If you go to the Van Jones website, Rebuild America, there's a 10-point list, and they have the Wall Street sales tax. Although they have it so small you need a microscope to see it. 1/20th of 1% is what they say, and I don't think they're really.
But we don't want a Wall Street tax. We want a speculator and finance oligarch tax.
But that's it, the Wall Street sales tax. And again, if you're concerned, if you trade for your own account, how about
And by the way, it's Wall Street trying to promote VAT and sales taxes on us to pay them largesse in bailouts. No, you will pay the tax, you little bastards.
Yeah, in other words, you don't want regressive taxation. You don't want taxation that falls more on people with less money. You want progressive taxation. But again, the people at the very top are so few. The Wall Street sales tax, the Tobin tax, is I believe, the way out of this. All right, so you look at this group in Washington. You know, they've got a board. They've got Gore Vidal on the board. They've got in other words, the whole group of tired left liberal word mongers, mushheads, the people who brought you Obama without apologizing to the American people after they gave them Obama. They inflicted Obama. What they did in the Democratic primary in 2008 gave us Obama. Now, of course, they're not happy with Obama, but there's no mention of Obama on these websites.
Exactly.
Right?
Let's go back here. Let's go back, though. We've got Obama money, Obama backers, though. So clearly they're throwing him under the bus. They're acting like revolutionaries again. They don't want Obama to be brought up. But as you said in the Obama Deception, now out for 3 years, 30-something million views on YouTube. By the way, YouTube is trying to shut that down right now. We're under a real purge. We know they're deep in bed with these guys. And then the little YouTube, Google people all go to Bilderberg. Webster, what I'm getting at here is that we have seen this huge Occupy Wall Street push, and we see the establishment trying to basically rebrand themselves when, as you said in the Obama Deception, Obama is the maximum Wall Street puppet.
So look, you got two poles now. You can either be a slave of the Koch brothers or you can be a slave of Soros. And I say break out of that with your own demands, which would be cancel these student loans, student loan amnesty, freeze it, debt moratorium, whatever you want to say. It's about $1 trillion of high-interest debt that's now crushing the younger generation. If you want to get the campuses activated for the first time in decades, student loan amnesty. Now, we've also got, as you mentioned, Bank of America and their group, right? They're doing fraud closures. Robo-judges, robo-cops, robo-signers. Stop fraud closures. Do the Fraser-Lemke Act. This is what was actually raised in the Democratic primaries. An obligatory freeze on all foreclosures on a primary residence for 5 years or the duration of the
All right, I want to comment on this, and then I want you to continue. Because I've got the full spectrum of solutions here on the show for our viewers to really think, get outside the box, and decide what they think is the best idea. If we have 16.6 trillion that we know about given, and then over 11 trillion others, we're talking 27 trillion or so here overall handed over to foreign banks. So if it's okay to give foreign banks that sold derivatives tens of trillions of taxpayer-based, why not make the banks take a hit? As you've said, they've already been paid off. All the mortgages don't amount up to the bailouts they've gotten.
Exactly.
But both good and bad. And most people aren't going to want to get rid of their mortgages. There's folks that are upside down. All of the student loans don't add up to this. So the point is, we've propped up these mega banks. You want to incentivize things. You write off people's debts. Now they're going to keep their full paycheck and actually finance grassroots business that would get the economy going. But the finance oligarchs don't want that. They want a depressed economy so they can come in and bring in their eugenics post-industrial world.
I think that's absolutely right. And remember, the fraud closures are illegal because there's no more chain of custody of who owns these properties, right? They fed them into this big database, and they've never made the changes in the local county registry offices that they would have to make. So they come and they say, guess what? I own your house. You have to say, produce the note. And normally they can't produce the note, but there's a robo-judge and a robo-cop who are going to kick you out of your own house. If you throw an American family out on the street in a depression, you should go to Leavenworth. That's the bottom line. And I don't care about any other consideration.
Well, I mean, Webster, you predicted in Obama deception that they would just bulldoze cities because you'd read their documents. Now they've already started to bulldoze 1/3 of Detroit. These are houses sitting there, but the bankers don't want to drive down housing values. They created a bubble. They don't want cheap housing. Instead of those houses going to people, they're bulldozing them, and that's the issue. They'd rather steal a house and bulldoze it than allow it to lower in price to actually house people. And so none of these neocon fake conservatives can say, oh, you're a communist, you're a socialist, because you're saying don't throw people out. You start throwing everybody out of their houses. We've already got close to 50 million on food stamps. It's going to be road warrior. It's going to be rioting. It's going to be total collapse. End all the banker bailouts and welfare and actually do take care of the people at home instead of paying with tax money to bulldoze it.
Very good. Exactly. And then the other thing, of course, is how do you pay for this stuff, right? If we say we don't want austerity cuts, you look at Greece, right? The Greeks have been cutting the budget, cutting, and the deficit is getting bigger. Surprise. That's the way it works. You cut the budget, you get a bigger deficit because you're cutting down the only activity that remains.
You're giving into the banker trap that they've done in over 100 third world countries. This is a stratagem.
Now, the other key point, the attack on the Federal Reserve, which I say is the nationalization of the Federal Reserve. Right now, the Federal Reserve is run by cliques of unelected, unaccountable bankers acting in secret. It's not enough to say down with Bernanke, get somebody else, because they got 20 others, and each one of them is worse than the one before. So that gets you nowhere. It's like getting rid of Mubarak and getting Tantawi. What have you gained? Nothing. It's actually worse. Similar in Tunisia. But the Federal Reserve now, Bernanke could easily be forced to create a Main Street credit facility, right? You've been mentioning the multi-trillions, right? 25 trillion, 30 trillion, 40 trillion, we don't know, that they've given to banks since the Depression began. Why don't we get 1 trillion in a Main Street credit facility? And that goes to states and groups of states who want to do what? Rebuild their highway systems, rebuild their rail systems, build the Texas T-bone, right? Get fast rail so you can go from Austin to San Antonio and Houston and other places. Build that into a nationwide network. Build the transcontinental and coastal and down the Mississippi River.
But wait, that's socialism. We got to give 27 trill to foreign banks and then watch it disappear.
That's Abraham Lincoln. Come on, that's the Transcontinental Railroad. That's
I know. I'm being sarcastic.
That's the Erie Canal. That's everything good that's ever been done to make this place
Brooklyn
work.
Bridge.
Brooklyn Bridge, I'm not so sure. But
the point is, Webster, I'm being